Here at Avacon, right? Right now, Smack That, all the legendary hits he's going to be performing this evening. So make sure you get your tickets if you haven't already. Awesome. We're going to kick back into the panels. Ladies and gentlemen, are there any sports fans in this evening? Few of us. Awesome. That's what we want to hear. Well, you've probably heard about the digital ownership front with sports and how much of a hot topic it is right now in the crypto industry. And we have a panel of experts that are going to be coming out to talk to you just about this topic. It's a really insightful topic, so it's one you want to listen out for. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to introduce the names that are going to be coming out. And then once they're all read out, we're going to give a massive round of applause as they come onto the stage. First off, the head of Web3 and Metaverse at PSG, Helgosson. The CSO of Chiliz, Max Rabinovich, the research lead at CoinMarketCap, Alice Lai, and head of sales operations at Cointelegraph, Paul Shikhaleev. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the panelists to the stage.
Hello, everyone. Nice to meet you here today. We are here to discuss how to unpack what's changing in Sports 5 in this part of crypto economy, where its real utility meets the fans, what's the status with compliance, and how to really combine two big passions of audience here, the blockchain technologies and also the sports. And I'm happy to welcome on stage Max. You've been shaping Chiliz and socials in the early days, turning fund tokens into the regulated asset class, which is safe to use at the moment. Also the PAR, PSG Labs has become a benchmark for real-world adoption and how the club bringing club operations into the blockchain infrastructure. It's really impressive for me. And of course, Alice, your team at CoinMarketCap tracks how these markets right now behave globally, from Asia to Europe, with data-driven insights. Happy to meet you guys here, and let's do some round of applause to our panels. And thank you. And I would love to start our discussion today with a question to Max. So what's our name of the panel? What does tokenization of sports mean in simple terms? And how can it allow fans to own a piece of their favorite team in real life?
I think it's a good question. I don't think I'm going to have the answer you think I'll have, because for a long time, whether it's in Web3 or otherwise, like tokenization of sports teams or communities was a utility gimmick. Even to an extent, when you talk about fan tokens, it's interesting and it's decent as a business model to be able to create revenue and create engagement out of a global community. But it never spoke to ownership, and there was never any sort of regulatory clarity or team comfort to actually go further. So it'd be, I mean, the short answer is it was maximizing as much as you could up against a brick wall. I think when we talk about it today and we talk about even our vision, the Chiliz vision for the future, it gets into the area of equities, of securitized tokenization, of finally creating retail-facing outlets where you're not selling tokens that put you on a reward spectrum like fan tokens do to engage with teams and to connect, which there is a market for it. I think we've proven there's a market for that, but I think the real mature market is actually, and I'll use PSG as an example, although as a caveat, we don't talk about this. With PSG, it's tokenizing, let's say, 10, 20% of a team like PSG, the actual equity of the team, and creating a retail-facing outlet for retail consumers, fans, and even grassroots investors to buy that. And having that asset be something that you bundle not only normal ownership, security-based ownership with, but also with engagement, with long-term generational engagement.
Thank you. Thank you for the answer. And you mentioned right now that it's more infrastructure thing than just a hype, of course, than just only something short-term. And that's interesting that both of our men today on the panel, for example, Max, you during the Korean Blockchain Week last month, you mentioned that tokenization is becoming infrastructure, not marketing. And at Paris Blockchain Week, you mentioned that PSG Labs treats blockchain as an infrastructure, not hype. And that's interesting that you're driving that same narratives around the globe, even separately from each other. And here's a question to Par. Which use cases for your club actually right now works for your funds to have this kind of experience? Can you please share it?
So you asked about the fans, but we also have other areas in the club that we engage with. So for fans and fandom, we do digital collectible drops, and they're all tokenized, fungible or in NFT forms, right? And we're also using, as one example, using AI machine learning algorithms to actually do that. So from a fandom and fan engagement perspective, this is always going to be, and should be for all clubs and brands, really a strategic initiative, because it will compound over time. But it would only do that if you have the rails and infrastructure in place, because otherwise every campaign has to kind of start over again, right? And so I think that's super important. The second one is, when we say we want to tokenize all valuable assets, and explore how to do it in the club, it means also internally at the club that we're looking to solve traditional business problems. That we just released the batch 2 for PSG Labs, where internal business units are transparent about the challenges that we want to solve, no matter if they're on-chain tokenized or not, right? But we open up, actually, the club to be engaged, if you will. So it's both, I guess.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great answer. And the next question from my side will be for Alice and current state of this sector in the industry. Do you have any insights of the real size of sports and fun token sector right now? And maybe which verticals, tickets, membership, RWA are going market share, where we are at the moment in this sphere?
Yeah, sure. So let's look at some of the data points. I have it live right here. So based on the CoinMarketCap different categories, we have actually fund token sector altogether have over 230 million USD in market cap. And we've seen the 24-hour volume is really active as well, around 140 mil. But if you look at the broader sports sector, that is close to $500 million, which is a very booming and growing sector. And it's also with very active volume. But there is a trend line, and I think that's everyone expected, which is volumes and prices, they really spike around major events. So tournaments like Euros, World Cup, and they often mean reverse afterwards, which is expected. So for example, the 2024 Euros saw double-digit sector swings within weeks. So we're definitely seeing a very strong momentum driven by all these major events. And also the share shift as well. So verticals really, they are echoing what Par and Max just mentioned. So the verticals that with clear redeemable utilities, so those tickets, memberships with guaranteed perks, receivable style RWAs, etc. Those ones are really popular and quietly compounding. So we are seeing that coming up strong as well.
Thank you. And interesting that you mentioned this interest spikes during the timeline, and I think I will ask the same question around this topic, because event-driven spikes still dominate. I mean, the World Cup, Euros, some Champions League final, etc. They drive interest around the sports and crypto industry. What CoinMarketCap data shows about user retention after that? So do the users really stay in this activations after this event? And also there will be the question to Max then, what do you think are the best tools maybe to remain this interest after this event?
That's a good question. I think first it's pretty important to remember that when you talk about volume and interest spikes during events, it's a feature, not a bug. So we never came into the space naive enough to think that just by its own accord, if you tokenize a membership program or you create a token-gated engagement environment, that's enough to actually prop up in any sustainable way, an 8 or 9 figure token economy for a single brand. We had since the beginning this view that really the end point for whether they're sports or media or music, whatever, any utility token that's tied to an IP is what you're really trying to build at the highest level is a sentiment marketplace. You're trying to hit a critical mass where there's enough events and enough traction and enough liquidity that often enough whether it's price motions or the volume swings of those tokens are mirroring real world events, you know, PSG doing well or poorly, PSG signing a player everyone wants or letting a player go that everyone loves, that ends up affecting the volatility of the token. And I think it's important to note that by itself I don't think is a winning formula, because if you have that alone, it's just a meme token. If you have the long-term contractual relationships and you have that redeemability utility base to say that this is a fun metagame, this is a fun almost, you know, gamified stock market of sports or any other IP. But by the way, you can still, you know, if you stake X, Y, and Z amount of tokens for X, Y, Z time, you can still get the tickets, you can get the fandom aspects of it, and that will never fluctuate. I think that's what works. And I think to answer your question most broadly, when you say, well, how do you keep people engaged, right? For example, we work with the Argentinian national team. You know, when they won in Doha, we could have gone to bed for 2 months, right? The interest in that token as they were coming up, and with the narrative of it being, you know, Messi's last World Cup and possibly last World Cup win, it does all the work for us and for us. And in the case of that token, there's no easy answer. Like, well, how do you keep that token engaged, you know, on a cadence that's more than once every 4 years? But I think it's possible if you have a strong enough network effect and deep enough liquidity that there's actually enough market interest in following the underlying IP performance for it to relate to the token. I don't think we're there yet, to be clear. I don't think anyone that does any sort of fungible tokenization of IP is there yet, but I think that's the end of the rainbow, if you will. You're trying to create a marketplace to appease, I think, the majority of people in this crowd, where if anyone here wants to buy 500 PSG tokens, they're buying them to play that game. They're not buying it because they think that's their best shot to get a ticket and go, you know, visit Par. You have to keep those two together, and you have to work your way up to a network effect where enough people in this room, for example, care more about how well or poorly a team does and how that may relate to the future of a token versus, well, how tied is this token into the Chiliz economy, which is in turn tied into the Ethereum and Bitcoin economy on a macro level.
Thank you. Thank you. Alice, do you have any comments on it?
Yeah, so just to add to what Max said, it's about reactivating. I think you mentioned right about the engagement throughout. So we do see traffic and search spike around the major events, but also, as you mentioned, some of the projects are able to maintain the fan engagement afterwards. And when it comes to, you know, the toolkits that you guys have, the very powerful at your disposal, season-long quests, tiered loyalty that unlocks IRL, for example, perks and stable off-season commitments, etc. Those are all very useful things that we're seeing from a CoinMarketCap community's perspective that are very useful in this area.
Thank you. And the next question will be to Par, because we now discuss more fun engagement part of this tokenization. And can tokenization of like sports industry really move from just only fun engagement to a core revenue stream for the clubs themselves? And how do you see it? Can it be really comparable to, I don't know, sport broadcasting, commercial sponsorships, or matchday income? How do you see it?
Yeah, I think we already kind of entered that journey where you mentioned broadcasting, commercial, and match day, right? We added another pillars to that with Web3 tokenization and PSG Lab now accelerating this. Not going into details, but your friend Alex kind of shared numbers sometimes, but because we are running nodes, we run validators, we stake. We buy back our own token. We use it to engage our fan base together with Chiliz and Socios. You know, in many ways, we are absolutely leading, both in volume, but also in terms of number of activities that we do. And we want to kind of like leapfrog that moving forward. So I think the answer is yes. I think there's obviously everybody in this room already know that crypto and blockchain is a faster rail, simply, right? And we provide a liquidity and transaction speed that's much faster than not. And so we already proven that. What we're going to do with PSG is we're going to explore the other type of products and services and the games and the experiences together with Chiliz Greenhouse, for instance, right? Where we will run lab iterations and accelerators together. So all of you know about launch pads and accelerators. We're simply attaching PSG and the ecosystem and the platforms that we both have to those ventures and to those products. And so we have already started doing that. So coming 5-10 years, I think, you know, the different clubs and the leagues out there will also make the revenues and find out the so-called silver bullets, which there aren't not. I mean, there's just a lot of bullets, meaning a lot of products from ventures that you need to kind of explore to figure out what works and how does it work. And this is what we're setting up now to kind of build it up, you know, stronger and better, I guess, right?
To be honest, to my opinion, I personally love what you're doing and the PSG Labs initiative itself, because I think most of the audience, they know Paris Saint-Germain football clubs as like a sport team, as Champions League winner, most powerful football team in the world right now, maybe. It's discussable. But can you please tell more to the audience about the PSG Labs itself and what type of projects enter it?
Yeah, so we're in our second batch now with PSG Labs, and PSG Labs is not just a one-time thing. So we're building up a global capability in Paris, in Doha for the MENA region, Singapore for APAC, and the US, we're doing West Coast and East Coast representatives. So we're building a quarterly batch accelerator where if you find something in our call out, we got 14 different sections today, and it's we want a 360 data capability at the club. We want to have a smart stadium solutions in place. We, of course, want to have fan loyalty and reward solutions. We're actively looking now for a wallet and a custody partner. We're looking for DAT companies doing RTOs on NASDAQ. So if you're racing a pipe or you need to do stuff like that, you should come and talk to me. We can do pre-launch, launch, post-launch, build communities. Whatever that is, these are things that we do natively for our ecosystem, but also we're looking for robotics because now they're smart. So, you know, we're expanding agnostically across innovation where we simply want to solve a business problem faster. And innovation companies like this is what's going to do it faster with us, simply. So we do it really across the spectrum. So anything classically with a club, digital content, media, all of it is available. Yeah.
That's wonderful, and I think we all need to follow your news, what's coming, because it really sounds promising, and I'm glad to see how this bridge right now is building by Paris Saint-Germain as the first club who is actually doing it. I hope that we will see more, not only football, I mean all the sports organizations to enter this field in near future, in coming, I don't know, 1 to 3 years. I think that's obvious that it's perspective. And the next question was to Max, and we start to talk about the utility itself and how we not only speculate with the price of the fund tokens, which of course everyone can sell and buy, but let's separate like price action from product action. What's the monthly active utility for Chiliz tokens? And after you got a MiCA license, do you see ticketing, loyalty programs migrating onto Chiliz chain, or you think that they will stay off chain right now? What do you think?
Ticketing specifically, you mean?
Yeah.
I think first to answer the utility bit of your question, you're right, and in a lot of ways I think it's the least exciting thing to talk about because it took us maybe 7 years to figure out that people want the same thing. Actual fans of teams want tickets, they want merchandise, they want to meet the players, meet the coaches, they want to go to the stadium. And I think as you draw the radius out from, you know, if I'm 10,000 kilometers away from PSG as opposed to 10 kilometers away from the stadium, people just want some level of recognition. I think it's really gone unnoticed a lot, whether it's in sports or honestly in any media IP, that most fans have A, no way to express their fandom, and B, have no way to actually financially support that IP, right? I would wager to say that, for example, in Southeast Asia, the majority of people that love PSG, and there's millions of those people, they watch streams that they aren't paying for. They're buying jerseys that aren't official merchandisers of Par's team. And it's not because they're crooks. It's not because they don't want to. It's just because that's what's available. If they were given anything, in our case, our bright idea we had is, well, what if we sold them a licensed asset, because at least we can meet them where they are, and if they already have, an account on Binance or something, they can interact with it there, right? And by solely interacting with the asset, that generates at a base at least revenue for Par, and at least gives us an asset connection to that user to say, okay, maybe if we build enough cool crap, if we build enough, and when we first started, we thought it was going to be centralized DAOs and voting, and then we thought maybe it was going to be gamified environments where, you plug your token in and then check into games, until we finally realized, like I think a lot of people in crypto, that it's a transactional technology, and most people feel like the value add they've given to an IP is by spending money on whatever asset's being sold, and they want it to be a more passive experience. So we've transitioned more into staking experiences, right? To get PSG tickets or to get cool things, you don't need to click 100 buttons. You just need to buy the assets and stake them to prove that you're loyal enough not to sell them when the price goes up or when the price goes down. And I don't necessarily think in the short or midterm it needs to be more complicated than that, because that's what ends up following human psychology and has a tether to the things that people, as I say, people in this room actually want to do. People want to buy assets, stake them, and generate a yield. And in our case, if the yield is gamified and it ends up being tickets and merchandise, more so than just stables or more of the same token, why not? That's the straightest line. But I do have to harp on the fact that I do think long term the price action is part of the utility, because if you get enough interest where tokens, or you redo token economics where you're minting supply when a team loses, you're burning supply when a team wins, etc., and you get enough interest into that marketplace, you can create a marketplace where the price action of a token follows the performance of a team or the popularity of a team, and it doesn't follow the macro performance of the market as a whole. And I think that would be immensely exciting for people. I don't think it quite exists. I think there's been glimpses of that, as Alice has pointed out and you've pointed out, but to have that hit a critical mass where that's mostly what drives the movement of the token, I think that there's still a way to go.
Thank you for this comprehensive answer. And I also noticed one important narrative which you mentioned right now, that all of our panel right now, the topic of this panel of tokenization of sports, of course it's important for new business models, but also it allows people from all over the globe to actually have active experience and to feel them as a part of Paris Saint-Germain Football Club or any other football sports team. For example, for people in Far East or in Africa or somewhere, it can be the only way to actually feel them happy to be connected to the favorite team. And I think that's beyond just the business models. It's really create happiness in people, which is completely, extremely important. So that's I think what we should focus on, to build bridges, not borders, I think. And the next question, I think, was goes to the Alice, because these initiatives, they are wonderful, and more we go into the space and final users trying to choose where to start with, they need to have enough data to make a decision, right? And what do you think, what metrics should projects connected to the sports and crypto maybe to share with the market, with the real audience?
Sure, you're asking a geek who is a researcher. I have all the metrics for you. All right, so a few things. Part one, I mentioned about price volume, community search, and keyword search. Now I'm gonna mention two more things. Number one is on-chain. Number two is business. So number one first, on-chain, we gotta measure active wallets by features. So that's votes, redemption, tickets mint, that is your ticket scans, gates, merge pickups, all of those. Redemption rates, on the perks, on the purchase rate, etc. And on-chain settlements of the shares of the total club revenue. How is that percentage of ticketing or sponsorship is settled on-chain? So those are some key things that we look at as well. Now, for the business metrics, I look at two things. Number one is the economic split, aka the club share versus the platform share versus the validator share. I think that's an important one to look at as well. And fee transparencies. I think some of these projects are very good at disclosing that as well. Now, the last part for business is post-event reactivation rate that we just mentioned, right? When it's off-season, what is their daily active user, monthly active user? Those ones combined together with the price and momentum, it gives me a very confident and comfortable bet.
Thank you. And once again, before going to any sports or any other crypto activity, don't forget to do your own research on everything you do. And that's an important reminder, which we all need to have on our wallpaper and iPhone. And here goes the question to everyone. For the future of sports financial industry, 5 years period from now, what will be, from your experience and opinion, the most valuable tokenized assets in sports? Will be revenue rights of the club, physical infrastructure of the sports organizations, interactions with fans? What do you think can be the most, tokenizable asset itself?
Well, I think I'll preface this with, by the way, you asked about on-chain ticketing. I don't believe that will really make quick headway due to a lot of business bureaucracy, and I don't think it doesn't solve or create any added value that doesn't exist today in a scalable way. In terms of the most valuable on-chain assets that are going to come from this industry, it's going to be, as I said before, the sports teams themselves. I think, and this is going to sound, I think, dumb to some people, but I really do believe that the top 50 sports IPs are wildly undervalued, and a lot of that has to do with the inefficiency and illiquidity of the market. I think if you open up sports ownership to an actual liquid marketplace as a structured product, that's going to go through the roof. There's a 0% reason why PSG is worth sub 10, $20 billion. Given their reach and given the amount of fans that they have, if you call them users, if you can name one other company that has 400 million users or account holders that's valued as cheaply as PSG, I would sit and wait for the rest of this panel. And I think the other thing that really has a chance to grow is the derivative assets of that. Tokenized broadcast rights and resale, I think is probably a fairly distant but close second. And then the actual tokenization of the physical IP, right? There is an issue even in the US, but also globally, of how do you effectively finance stadiums and the infrastructure around stadiums to actually accommodate a much more global presence for a lot of these teams. And if you unlock that capital via broadly available retail tokenized structured products, the value of that should also shoot up as well and should open up a lot more investment opportunity.
But from the club standpoint, do you agree with these sectors which will be the more interesting for tokenization?
Well, I agree. Depending on who you have as an owner, things could come into play where you tokenize the stadium race, building a new one, or a fundraising for a player in the future, or just the team in itself, I'm sure. An interesting fact, I think you mentioned the valuation of clubs, let's say, in Europe is very different versus if you look at the US, right? Our multiples is much lower. So you take PSG, we run a little bit more than 800 million euros in revenues. We're valued a little bit more than 4 billion. And so if we were to be listed somewhere else, I'm sure the multiple would be very different, right? From a PE ratio, NASDAQ. But having said that, I think there are so many different ways that we are doing today that we can simply tokenize and put on a crypto on blockchain rail. All of the financial transactions, right? No matter sponsorship deals and or retail chains and or or fan engagement in terms all the way down to micro, rewards to buying and being rewarded by fan tokens or other utility tokens or using stables, right? So I think, yeah, I mean, the question is, where should you start that makes sense for you and how do you move forward? But to not start doesn't really make sense, right? Because we have already kind of shown that one, it makes sense for us. Two, we're practicing every day on trying to figure out now faster with labs and greenhouse and other accelerators that we have in place to figure out what are the next partners, ventures, products that we can run with, right? And so, I think to your point, CoinMarketCap, it's almost like when we talk about clubs in Europe, like you have clubs on your exchange, meaning you belong to different communities, right? It's almost like the same thing but different, right? So same thing for us. We need to figure out how we're going to bridge this together, I guess, right? Because we have so many fans and users that we simply need to figure out how to bridge over, and that's the key thing, right?
Thank you. And to reach these goals, I think maybe the final question to everyone, what one thing must change in UX design, in regulation, on all the environment for this mass adoption of sports and crypto user experience to grow even faster than it goes right now? What one thing you will change to foster this growth?
Well, I'd say regulatory frameworks and clarity, just so that it's not like, I think people underestimate how little exposure, for example, classic traditional finance institutional players have or are able to have, not just in like specific niche products like tokenized structured products that represent team ownership or stadiums, but even in something as simple as Bitcoin, right? There are still layers and layers of hurdles for whether we're talking about the MENA region or even in the United States. People are just still trying to figure out how do you get the trillions of dollars in capital that have even a nascent interest in exposing themselves now into this ecosystem. How do you let them do it in a frictionless way, right? And you start to see digital asset treasury companies and these kind of more novel but less scalable ways of offering exposure to people to, first it was Bitcoin and now it's more and more altcoins, for example. There's no simple solution for that. I mean, I know there's a lot of economic investment and incentive for people to push for that clarity, but I think once those doors are wide open and, PAR's business partners don't need to have 2 years worth of legal meetings before they can figure out if they can tokenize 5% of PSG and who can they sell it to and how and what are the right disclaimers. That's what you're waiting for. I don't think it has really much to do with adoption in the way that I think crypto people are used to speaking about adoption in terms of like, oh, it's education. We want people to figure out that they want these things. I think when you're talking about these mature products that have a sound financial basis, it's just how do you unlock the gate? There's thirst for this that's already been clearly displayed on a global level.
Yeah. Alice, do you agree that clear regulation framework is the main thing we need to have for this to finally happen?
Yeah, so I will talk about the UX first. I have a dream of walletless, sign-in, safe payment methods, fiat on-ramps, and then tap to scan tickets. That would be my dream for the UX. And for the regulation, I think if we could have some sort of MiCA style disclosure template for fan utilities, that would be awesome.
Thank you. I think it was a wonderful fireside chat and fun tokens and everything related to tokenization of sports. It's just born as collectibles, NFTs, etc. And now it's matured into real engagement tools as we see in the market, thanks to PAR driving this from Paris Saint-Germain from club's perspective, and also Max showing how people can have this experience, and also Alice driving from CoinMarketCap for people to make their own decisions on what to interact with. So I think the next phase is not about the speculation and it's about the ownership of the true experience. Thank you guys for the wonderful panel.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. Yep.
Very insightful panel. One more round of applause for all the panelists we just had.